Welcome to Mystery Woman Knowledge. I'm Sam Beer, and I've almost failed every history course I've ever taken. With us is someone who should have been an art history major, Tori Hirsch. What are we talking about this week?
I almost tried not to be an art history major, but to be an art history minor, and I couldn't squeeze it in.
Why would you
But
want to be a
today,
minor forever?
hmm?
Why would you want to be a minor forever?
Because I thought it was neat, and I didn't want to major in it, and I knew that. So I just wanted to add it on. But I was already adding on painting, and I was already shoving creative writing in there, so I had to stop. Anyways, the podcast today is not about me.
My
It's
point
about...
stands. What are we talking about today?
We're talking about the relationship between two artists, Mary Cassatt and Edgar Dega. The relationship has enthralled lots of people. There was actually a play
Welcome to
written.
History.com with our new
Yes.
documentary by Tori Hirsch.
Oh my gosh. There was a play that was written about them called The Independents, and in it they were portrayed as really hating each other and fighting constantly, but also kind of hinting that they were in love, which is kind of the vibe that people usually assume their relationship was like. Um, a lot of art historians are like they weren't in love; they were just friends. But it
But you
goes.
could ask any historian, like, about any two people that knew
It's
each
true
other.
though. Yeah.
And they'd be like, well, if they, like, obviously they were, like, dating. Like, they
Mhm.
were hitting that.
Uh-huh.
They'd be like, no, they were fucking friends.
Yeah.
But if they were, like, cousins, they'd be like, no, they were hitting that.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. Doesn't
So
compel me.
weird. No, absolutely not. So that's kind of what we're talking about today is their relationship and their friendship. And whether or not they were in love, they had a really interesting friendship and they were really cool people. So I thought it would be nice to talk about them. But in addition to the play that was written about their relationship, there was also a book, a really popular book written by Robin Oliveira. And it was called I Always Loved You, and it was historical fiction about their relationship. Um, so people are really obsessed with them and what they
What,
were like.
as someone who literally deadass has no, again, majored in art, failed
Mhm,
art history,
mhm.
what's the fucking, like, where are they from? What time are they from? What are they?
Where are they from? So um, they were born. Mary Cassatt was born in 1844, and Edgar Degas was born in 1834. So they're 10 years apart. Edgar
Damn.
is 10 years older than her, but that's kind of the time frame that we're looking at. They became friends in 1877. So I'll start with a little bit of information on them individually and kind of talk about their lives and where they're from. So we're going to start with Mary because I like her more and I think she's more interesting.
Get fucked, Dega.
Um,
How do you feel about
um,
them apples, bad boy?
Mary was born in Allegheny City, PA, which is now part of present day Pittsburgh. It's actually the north
Boo!
side. Boo!
You suck!
No, that's exactly what she thought. So,
I mean,
um,
that's what most people think.
yeah. She was born into a really wealthy family. She was really lucky with the opportunities that she had. She got to travel when she was younger. She got to go to school. She was just very privileged and but I mean, despite all of this, she was a woman and she was discouraged by her family for
Despite
being an
all of
artist.
this, she was
Despite
a
all of
woman.
this, she was a woman. So there were so many things that she couldn't do. It just absolutely wasn't allowed to do. Um, but even her family was really against her being an artist, more so her father than her mother. Um, her
As
sister, who
it
she was
goes.
very close
Jesus
with.
Christ. That's how it goes, isn't it?
So, yeah, that's how it is. Her sister was really supportive and really sweet and actually lived with her while she was an artist for a little bit. And her mother would go back and forth and or be like, I don't like your artist friends, but that was kind of the extent of,
Nobody
you
likes
know,
anybody's artist friends.
I don't like your artist friends. You
Get
should live a more
over it,
decent life.
Mary's
Yeah,
mom.
things like that. But her dad was like, no, it's ridiculous for a woman to do this. Um, but despite all of that, despite the constant discouragement from her family, she did start school at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, which was in Philadelphia.
Boo. Oh, okay. Not so much boo.
20% of students were women. Her parents were not only upset that she had just enrolled in a school to become an artist, especially because many of the women who were enrolled didn't enroll to become an artist. It was more like, this is going to be my hobby. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Like they enrolled because they were like, I'm a rich woman and I should learn a skill.
mm,
It was kind of like mystery
mhm.
woman skills. Yeah, that's
Mm.
what they enrolled for.
There we go.
Um, but not only were her parents just concerned about that, they were very worried that if she
If,
went to school, she would be exposed to feminist ideas and a bohemian lifestyle exhibited by her
no,
male peers.
that, yeah, that adds.
Yeah.
That equals up to some.
Um,
Whew, we don't have time to unpack all that, though. Anyway.
a lot of these bohemian lifestyle men that they were really worried about were just really socially unconventional artists. Um, so Mary was enrolled in school there and she was going there, but she really kind of hated it because
Bars, bars,
she barely
bars.
learned anything.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
No, I get it. No,
this
I
whole
get your
time it's gonna be like
fascination with it.
relatable. I get
Yeah, no,
it.
I get it.
um, so she was really frustrated, and women weren't even allowed to use real models at the time. They had to use casts
What
because
does that mean, like a
women looking at
mannequin?
because women
Gross.
looking at naked people was very indecent,
Well, that's
and most
how
of
the Satan gets you.
it's really and male students and teachers were really patronizing, and the instruction was paced really slow. And Mary was kind of like, pick it up. I want to learn. I'm here.
Ladies, let's get it
I'm
on.
young. I'm ambitious. I want to learn. Yeah.
My dad hates me. I
My
only have
dad,
my sister. Let's
let
go.
me learn art. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she left Pennsylvania because she was like, why am
Bars.
I here?
Bars, bars,
What am I
bars.
doing? What am I learning?
No,
And
she's
she
right.
went to Paris. She went to Paris.
Okay.
Well, okay, she went to Paris because Paris was kind of like the art capital.
It. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the
Yeah.
place to be. And there were like so many more opportunities for her there. As a woman to be an artist and to be
Really?
accepted in social spaces. Yeah, which is interesting.
I thought Paris was like always mad ifster for like
It
every
was
single person in history.
yeah, it wasn't like when I say it was a little more forward thinking, I definitely don't mean like it was a great place to
Like
be
on
and that
God, they
as a
got equal
woman.
pay.
Yeah, yeah. So she went to Paris. And at this point in her adult life, she's ambitious. She wanted to be as independent as a man could be, and she wanted to be able to support herself. She didn't want to marry someone. She didn't want to start a life, despite her family pretty consistently telling her you should give up this art thing and just go marry a rich man.
I mean,
Um,
were they wrong?
they were wrong in this
Okay.
one instance, yes, because she had all the opportunities that she got. She got hold of a lot of opportunities that came to her anyways. She was constantly working and she produced really great art, so she was able to succeed on her own. But
Damn it.
most of that is attributed
The
to her
goal.
her
Fuck her.
stubbornness. She was a really stubborn lady, and she just really wanted to learn and really wanted to leave Pennsylvania.
No, I
And
get that. Yeah.
yeah, she just really wanted to learn. All right. So now we're going to switch over to Edgar Degas and what he was like. So he was born in Paris, France. He's a Frenchman. He was born into a middle class family. His family actually fibbed a little bit about their social status for a long time and kind of suggested that they had an aristocratic background, but they didn't. Um, both of his parents were really musical, and his father loved art and actively encouraged him to learn and become an artist. And they were just like, "Go, Edgar, go learn."
So they were hippies.
So yeah, pretty much.
Sick.
Yeah, and Edgar was really into like the old masters, classical studies. He did a ton of just reproductions of a lot of Italian Renaissance works because he was like, "This is art. This is incredible." Um,
What was there like what was the art movement era that they're entered
so
into?
by this time, this is 30 years prior to when the Impressionists took hold,
That
and
means
I'll
nothing to
talk
me.
about. the
Okay,
Impressionists
good.
later. During this time, a lot of the artwork was very realistic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of art centered around industrialism and stuff because that's just what was happening at the time. Both Mary and Edgar really enjoyed traveling. So during this time in his life, when he was being admitted to like all these prestigious art schools, after 1 year of attending, he took 3 years off.
I
He was like,
respect that.
he was like, that is enough for me, and he
I
just left.
respect it.
And he traveled around the world. He went to Italy. He focused on Italian
He
Renaissance
got his
painters.
fundamental classes in, and then he said, "I'm bailing, dude.
That's exactly
I'll
what he
see
did.
y'all later. I know how to draw this fucking cube. I'll see
That is
y'all later."
exactly it. Yeah, he was like, "I know what to do. I'm good." And then he just left and
I
studied
respect
on his
that.
own.
It's
And
the
he
best
was
way
like,
to
"I'm
do
gonna
art
teach
school.
myself."
Best way to do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, he just took what he needed and then he just left. And he didn't really have a teacher and he didn't take on any students in his life because he was kind of a loner and well, I'll get to his personality. I wrote down he was an old hermit curmudgeon.
You
he
fucking love
had
that word.
he had this reputation for having this like really awful, blunt, quick wit. Um, and most people thought that he was really mean, and some people thought that it was more like just kind of this blunt honesty. Um,
No one thought it was like a bit or anything. Like it was a joke.
oh, it was definitely a bit. It was absolutely a bit because he is quoted as saying, "I want people to believe me wicked." And he
I
just acted
respect
like
that.
that constantly. He insulted people.
I respect that.
He was like never ever afraid to insult people, and Mary loved it.
The
She
bold
was
and the
like,
beautiful.
"Yes, Edgar, go get them." Um, what did you say?
I said the bold and the beautiful.
um, he also did this thing where he had these really fun, stupid rivalries with his other artist friends. Or all of a sudden he'd be like, "My rival," and then he would just fight with them and criticize them, which is really fun. But yeah, he had this awful reputation as being like this horrible, miserable person. But secretly, in all of his letters to the people that he actually loved and cared for, he was really, really nice. And he had nice things to say, even if it was rare. But he was,
You
he was,
are the dark side of the moon, and I think that you should really go to school and get your degree.
God, he was just an ass.
Good
It
for him.
just, yeah. Well, I guess, but
Takes a lot of, especially back then, took a lot of fucking like bold, just
mhm.
bold thought paths to choose to be an asshole
Yeah, it
when it
did.
could ostracize
Especially,
you,
yeah, that was the danger during this time,
especially in the
especially.
fucking art community.
What was happening in the art community is there were a lot of like realists and traditionalists who wanted to stick to this really weird, archaic way of art. Um, and a lot of different art movements were popping up where they were like, we don't want to paint portraits of boring people anymore. We want to paint these things. We want to explore this kind of painting, which was really cool. But it was a lot of people were like, it's chaos. We don't know what's going on.
Little did they
Um,
know, 200 years later, people would be looking at canvases with dots on them for no fucking reason. God, I hate modern art. Anyway, let's get
anyway,
it.
oh, you know what though? The more that I read about modern art during this time and the artists who kind of pushed for modern art, it's kind of equivalent to like more traditional artists today vouching for digital art is kind of what it sounded like.
Do you mean vouching
Like
like,
defending
okay.
digital. Yeah. Yeah. It sounded like because it wasn't like we're defending modern art in like I don't know. I don't want to say like the stupid it's rude. The kind of the like classist and really old archaic ways that we kind of um idealize modern art. They were kind of defending modern art as this is new and this is different and we should appreciate it.
Mm,
Yeah, yeah. Like
they're not
modern art
appreciating
today.
it like, I'm gonna scan my painting in and then make it a cryptocurrency.
No, no. They were into it like, "Oh my god, we found these cool printmaking techniques. They're really radical and new. we're gonna try and use these. It was that kind of thinking.
Hmm.
Like modern art today, I don't think is equivalent to what they were thinking modern art was then. It would be more kind of like
Yeah.
digital art, I think.
Yeah.
Um, but in the 1870s, they really admired each other's work. They were really big fans of each other. But and even though they kind of had like the same social circles and went to museums and things, they could have like interacted a few times, but they just kind of didn't. Um, but Degas, for some reason, is quoted going up to one of Mary Cassatt's artworks. And every once in a while, he was just really edgy and really
I
weird
respect
and
it.
emotional. And he just went up to her art and he looked at the painting and he said, "There is someone who feels as I do." And then he like went right to her studio. And people were
I
like,
must
"What?"
go.
He was like, "I must
His
go.
fucking little
I must
cape.
speak with her." Yeah.
His little shoulder cape that I know he had on his fucking coat. I must go. Fucking dramatic. I love it. I
Yeah.
strive for that fucking bullshit.
Mhm.
That's the best part
Yeah,
about art history is how fucking dramatic every couple of artists or every decade.
so dramatic. These two were ridiculously dramatic. Even though Degas was like kind of this boring, not boring, that's rude. I
Get
think
him,
that he was
Tori.
just, he liked to be alone, he liked to just paint, he liked to just study things. Um boring is a mean thing to say. But anyways, um they met in 1877 when Degas visited her studio and he asked her to exhibit with the Impressionists. So at this point in time, they're both really successful artists. Even Mary, despite like everything that she's kind of faced to get where she is. And at this time, right before the Impressionist exhibit, her art was kind of not selling as much and she wasn't doing as great.
So she was a
Um,
lady.
yeah, and some attribute to the this to when she was fighting with a lot of the prominent members of the art societies that she was a part of. Um,
Oh, so those were like still like big as fuck during
yeah.
this time. Okay.
Yes, she had this reputation for just kind of saying when things weren't fair or talking about, women should be able to exhibit this or,
Yeah, she should.
just pointing, yeah, exactly, pointing out things that were wrong in the art world. But and a lot of men who were in the art world were like, she's really self-centered. She's not even married. She's outspoken. I don't think we should let her
Lady,
exhibit.
scale me.
Yeah, so this
Grow
was
up.
during a point in her life where she had done a lot of really wonderful artwork, but she wasn't getting as many shows just because of the things that she said and the things that she thought. And she was an active feminist. So she did go to school and was exposed to feminist ideas. She carried all of them with her throughout her life. I think she was a part of the suffragette movement as well for a bit. I'm sorry, were you gonna say something?
Was she the lady? I could be fucking thousands of years off here. Hundreds of
Hmm.
years, not thousands. Was she the lady that drew that dude getting stabbed really dramatically by the
No,
one? No, okay.
that was Artemisia Gentileschi.
How many hundreds of years was I off? Like
A lot.
six.
A lot. No, no. I think it was like 200
I've
years,
taken I've taken like
maybe.
12 art history classes.
Hmm.
I retained like four things.
Oh God, that's great.
I don't know how I have a degree.
I don't know either.
Anyway, that's rude.
Anyways, no, no. Anyways,
You know
so
exactly how I
Mary
have a
was
degree.
really outspoken. Edgar, however, was not for the feminists, but he wasn't like anti-woman, and he wasn't like this. But he had every once in a while he said something kind of misogynistic where he'd walk up to Mary and be like, "Damn, no woman has a right to paint like that." And she was like, "What's that supposed to mean?" So they had a lot of those kind of arguments.
Was it like, damn bitch, that shit looks awesome?
Yeah, but he
But
said it
that's
in
what it
kind of a
but he
backhanded
was like,
way.
damn
Yeah.
bitch. Nobody deserves to paint like that shit.
Yeah, yeah.
Damn.
um
No, I'm with
yes.
Mary on that one. Mary wins that argument. Alright.
Yeah, yeah, she does. Um So Mary at this point has become known for painting really lovely portraits of women. And her portraits of women were really important because it was during a time where a lot of the paintings that were done of women, they were nude and they were like really
Was
obviously
she
under.
the lady? Again, I'm probably like 100 years off here. Was she
Uh-huh.
one of the ladies that drew like women and children or like
Yes.
handmaids? There we go. The brain comes
Yes.
back.
Women and children was her like number one subject. Yes.
Like just living their lives instead
Yeah,
of
just living their
being
lives. And it
weirdly
was.
naked all the time.
Yes, it was a really radical subject to paint because all the paintings were under the male gaze and they were all like even
Gross.
if yeah, it was a really gross time to be a woman and look at art.
Mhm. Mhm.
And all of her paintings were just women living their lives and it was really cool because she painted them in the spaces that women were allowed in. So it was also kind of this social commentary like I'm painting them in the garden because that's the only place I was allowed to go, you know.
Mhm.
Um which was really cool. Um, and Edgar respected her a lot for it. And he thought that her paintings were just really cool and her portraits were really wonderful. And he had done portraits. That's how he started painting was portrait painting.
Mhm.
So he really respected her for that as well. Um, but yeah, and then Degas painted portraits as well. And this was during the time when he painted a lot of ballerinas. He went through that phase where all he painted was ballerinas.
Hey
And
man, we all
when
go through phases. Let
And
the
when
man
people
live.
yeah, when people asked him when they were like, "Why are you doing this? Why are you
Pretty
painting so
shape.
many ballerinas?" He said, "I like painting people moving." And he also said, "I like painting pretty clothes." And they were like, "Okay,
Right,
freak."
freak. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
that ass.
exactly what it was. Um, he also um he also kind of just sat on his own and observed and painted people a lot, you know? And I think
Mhm.
that's why he kind of like painting ballerinas is he could just sit on the sidelines and do nothing but paint. Um, so Mary's style of painting did shift more towards Impressionism, which was a really radical art movement for the 1870s. And so did Edgar's work, but he didn't like being called an Impressionist,
My name's Edward.
despite being a founding member of the Impressionists. He was like, "Don't call me that." And he fought with other people in the Impressionist group that he was
Call
in.
me by my real name.
Yeah, and they were like, "Why?" They were like, "You've helped us found this. Why won't you just be?" He
You
exhibited.
sign. It's like looking at George Washington being like, you signed the Constitution. George Washington would be like, no.
Yeah, yeah. He was like, "Yeah, I think it's a really great idea. I don't think my art really fits under that category, though." And they thought it was really
God, no.
obnoxious,
He
so they
was
fought
just
a
being
lot.
edgy.
Yeah. Oh, that's absolutely what it was.
That's absolutely just it. He was just like, I'm my own man.
Yeah.
Okay, dude, come on.
But he kind of where was I in my notes? Yeah, he considered himself to be very much still this realist. Um, and he was a perfectionist and he loved complexity and he just kind of liked the technicality of art and painting. And
I want to make a side conversation here. How
yeah,
the
sure.
fuck? Because nowadays, like, I'm sure you could ask whoever the fuck, can I come in and paint like
Yeah.
in the theater? I'm sure they would say no. How
Mhm.
did how many artists like were just like, all right, I wake up, doesn't
Mhm.
write a letter or go down to the theater, just like walk in
Yeah.
with a notebook and their
God,
paints and
that's
be like,
such a good question.
"Goro, it's just me.
Yeah.
You have to paint." Why?
I have no
No one
idea.
questioned that.
You know, I think that especially in Paris, because it was happening so much, I think that people
Or
were
people
just
were just
like,
like ignorant to it.
well, I think they were like, what harm is gonna come from just letting this person sit here and paint, you know?
Mm.
Next up. I realized I had nothing to like.
Hey, anyway, coming up.
Anyway, um, I wrote down that he just sketched a lot of people, observing them quietly, which I know I said before. But he just really loved to be alone. Whereas a lot of the
Mm.
paintings subjects for Mary she like knew and did things with, and it was kind of almost a social activity. So she could like go to the park with their friends and paint them, you know. She really enjoyed that. Um, but yes, he didn't like being considered an impressionist because
Oh Christ.
he was a perfectionist and he loved complexity and he was really obsessed with the technical workings of art. He
Mm.
also, in a lot of his sketches that he did, what did you just do?
Oh, I fucking launched my phone across my desk and it slammed into my monitor.
Well done, well done.
Thank you.
hmm Um, oh Lord.
Did you lose your spot again?
Yeah, I did. I
Technical
don't remember what I was
workings.
saying. That's right. Thank you.
Yep.
And a lot of the sketches that he did, they were kind of like half done, and they're kind of described as he doesn't really know what's happening. He's just making lines and hoping that it looks like a person.
Me.
Yeah, and a lot of his drawings were done like that, just kind of figuring out, like, wonder what this looks like. So I think that he was really into the technicality of everything, maybe because he had a hard time seeing things like that. Because he was also very like had to stare at an object and paint it at the same time, you know?
Because that thing that I have.
Yeah.
What the fuck is that called? I don't remember what it's called.
I don't remember either, but that's exactly what I thought.
The can't
Because
see
all of
nothing up there.
his yeah.
Can't see nothing in your mind disease.
'Cause all of his work is like that. Um, but another reason why he didn't feel included in the Impressionists is because all of the Impressionists were like, we're gonna go outside. You think like Monet was a leading Impressionist. We want to go outside. We want to paint things with
Oh.
natural light. We want plein air. We want, you know, we want everything natural, outdoors, breathing the fresh air. And
I have a unpopular opinion. I do not like looking at Monet's artwork.
you've said that you didn't like Impressionism before.
It doesn't look good.
I do remember this. I really
Sorry
enjoy it.
to everyone.
So.
Sorry to this man in front of me just now. I
Good.
don't like it. Good. No, fuck you. Retraction. Sorry to everyone except for Tori Hirsch who likes Impressionism.
I love it.
I
I love it. I
love
think it
it.
looks great.
Sorry.
I love it. But yeah, anyways,
Ugh.
Sam.
Gross.
Yeah, this is exactly what Edgar thought.
Good for
Ugh.
him. No, I respect that.
And everyone, all of the Impressionists were like rushing outside with their art supplies, and well, this was also, Impressionism was nice because the invention of the tube in which to put paint allowed them to carry the paint outdoors with them.
What did they do with it before? Was it just in those like palette things?
They mixed it. Yeah, well, they had
With
like,
the glass and the smooth glass, and they would put the paint down and mix it, and then they would
yeah,
grind it.
exactly. They had to mix it and make it right there. But now
Stupid.
they were able to take it with them and transport it places, which was really exciting. So they were like, "We love this. We're gonna do all our Impressionism outside." And Edgar went, "Ugh, yuck,
There's my
don't want
point.
that," and did every single one of his paintings indoors.
Do you think Edgar was autistic?
You know what? As I
Because
was reading about
he
this, I was like,
sounds a lot like me.
yeah,
I think
I don't
Edgar was
know.
autistic.
God. Where was I? Oh, okay. This brings us to their relationship.
Yay!
So, yay! So they met each other, they know each other, now they're going to start working with each other. So the main thing that they had going on was they challenged each other constantly. They were constantly sending notes back and forth, criticizing each other's work. Mary Cassatt is quoted as saying about Degas, "He was the only man I know whose judgment would be a help to me." At the same time, she hated him. And she hated every bad thing that he had to say because he didn't say it nicely. He just said it bluntly. And he was like, I think that this looks bad. And she would be like, you know what, Edgar? And she would
Get
get
out
really
of
mad
my
at him.
house.
Yeah, she would get really mad. Because he was blunt and he would just tell her, this is what I think about your art. And she was like, fuck you. I
Didn't
don't
they
want
like
this.
went to like coffee sometimes though? And they just like talked about cats.
Women weren't allowed in cafes.
Hey, how about
So they didn't go to cap, but
How
they
did
did
she
go
live? Does
to.
she own a house?
You had to have a chaperone to go almost anywhere. Eventually, she did have her own home, but she had to be constantly accompanied by someone.
What the fuck?
So what was really nice is her and Degas would go to places where he knew that she was allowed to go. So he would take her to all these museums and um, gallery shows,
The
and they would
French
go.
said you can't get a good drinky with your buddies, but
I,
you can
I
go to
literally they
museums.
considered it to be like really indecent and weird.
What
So
do you
I don't know.
people drinking?
I guess. I
Okay.
guess. Um, So yes, so she loved his criticism and hated it. There was one story that they were going back and forth once, and Mary painted a painting that looked just like his. And then she sent it to him, and he wrote her back and said, "Mary, this is it. This is wonderful. Honestly, the best work you've ever done." And she wrote back this letter that was like, "Aha, you bastard!" And that was their whole like exchange. But even though he was like a really harsh critic, he owned more of her art than any contemporary artist
Hmm.
ever. He loved everything that she did,
She
and he
wasn't.
wrote to her constantly.
Did she also live in the same boat that was like, I'm not an impressionist?
No, she kind of liked impressionism.
Okay.
Yeah, she really liked it. She thought it was neat. She really liked to experiment and she liked to learn. That was kind of her main thing. So impressionism was kind of all about that during the time. So she was really into it.
Hmm.
Um, Sometimes they'd work on each other's art. They were constantly promoting one another. It was really nice because Mary was American, so she could bring all of Degas' work and kind of influence Impressionism here in the States,
Mhm.
while Degas kind of pushed um, European people to buy all of her artwork, which is like an awesome relationship to have because they were spreading all of these new ideas and this cool artwork all
Mhm.
across the world, which is really cool. Sometimes Mary would model for him. There's a sketch that he did of her where he's sitting behind her and she's just looking at art. And then there was a painting that he did of her where she's holding some cards and she sold it instantly and was like, "Get rid of this." And he was like, "Why?" And she said, "I look gross, Edgar." And so she just got rid of it.
Delete that picture, Edgar.
Delete that. Jesus. Yeah. Um, Eventually, they both got really into these Japanese prints, which were called Ukiyoe Prints. And they were, I'm trying to remember, I learned about this years ago, so I'm kind of
Aren't
dragging this
they
memory out.
what block prints?
Yes, they were done in Japan, and then they were actually prints that um, whoever made them didn't think they were quite good. So they would wrap imported items and ship them to the US. So when they would get these imports and open everything up, they'd get this beautiful print that wrapped up their goods.
Hmm.
And Mary and Edgar were like, "Oh my god, this is so cool. This is so neat." So they had this whole idea. They were like, "We're going to get into printmaking. We're going to try this." And they were like so excited. They were like, "We're
Every
going to do this
white
together."
person's downfall. Let's get into printmaking.
So it was actually Edgar's idea to start this whole printmaking project, and it was really ambitious, and it was kind of a lot. So him and I don't know if they really were in love. What it sounds like is Degas tricked her into spending a massive amount of time with him because he had this whole idea, and so they were at each other's studios constantly. Mary's mother hated it. She was like, "Come home, stop wasting your time with that man and paint your own stuff." And she was like, "No, I love printmaking." So they spent a lot of time together, and then one day Edgar was like, "Oh my god, I hate this." And he just like threw the whole project in the trash. And Mary was like, "Okay." She was like, "You don't want to do any of this?" And Edgar was like, "I hate this so much." He was like, "Why? I hate this so much."
Me.
And he just got rid of it.
I think
Yeah.
Edgar was autistic.
He just threw it away. He was like, "Nah." It's so funny because I kept reading about this, and it was just like one day he was like, "This isn't for me."
I get that.
After working on this for such a long time. Um, but they both wanted to learn and grow and challenge ideas of the archaic art world that they were trapped in. Degas especially influencing modern art and influencing new ideas in the art world. Um, some say that this was a romantic relationship because they never got married. They never had children. They just spent time with each other. Um, but Mary also burned all of the letters they sent each other when Edgar died. And she made sure when he was old that his niece would be able to take care of him. And in the way where she wrote to his niece and she was like, "If you don't take care of him, I swear to God." She was like, "He's old and she was like, "You know he can't take care of himself. Go take care of him. You know he's just sitting there in his hole drawing shit. Go
Oh
help
wait,
him."
did she go back to America?
You know what? After the Franco-Prussian War, I think that they Oh, you know what? No, that was earlier on. I'm incorrect. But yeah, eventually, well, no, she moved to Italy in her old age.
Hmm.
And I believe he stayed in France. But she just liked Italy and she was like, "I'm gonna live here when I'm old." So she just left and went there. Um she also what else? It's important to consider also that her reputation was at stake. So if they ever
Oh, if
did
they got
become
married.
romantic,
Yeah.
she would never ever be considered
An
her own
artist.
outstanding
Yeah.
artist. Yeah, and he knew that. He was very, very aware of how to protect her, how to make sure that she was recognized for all of her efforts.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just kind of making sure that she was kind of in the spotlight. So if they really did care about each other at all, it makes sense that they wouldn't ever be able to be romantically involved because of how much they respected each other. But um it's also Mary, in addition to burning all of their letters, like sometimes she would burn artwork that she hated because she was so obsessed with her reputation being good and strong and perfect. So some people argue that she burned the letters to uphold her reputation, but like
Oh,
what was
did
in those
she?
letters?
Did they have like a falling out at some point when she left for Italy? And then,
They had a few arguments. There was
well, I mean, they
some
argued, but was it?
Yeah, there was something that happened in France where all of a sudden Degas had some really weird anti-Semitism in his old age, and Mary wasn't a fan of it, and they argued a lot. But they didn't have a falling out necessarily. They still loved each other up until his death.
Hmm.
Yeah. And they wrote to each other constantly. They visited each other when they could. They sent each other paintings. Um, he left a lot of paintings to her too. Like he left her a lot in his will.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But yeah, I just think it's a really cool friendship. And historians agree that it was one of the most significant artistic relationships of that era. So not only was it interesting and they were interesting people, but they influenced the art world significantly. And
Yeah.
if it wasn't for Degas and Cassatt and them working together with Impressionism, Americans probably wouldn't have known anything about that. They
Hmm.
wouldn't have been as enthralled
Yeah.
with it as Americans were. Yeah. Um, but were they in love? I don't know. I don't know. I wouldn't burn my letters though.
I know you wouldn't.
Like I would burn letters if something was happening. I get it, but I don't know. Yeah, it's very divided in the art world too. I mean, not really. Most people think that they were just friends, but um a lot of people think that there was something more there and they just couldn't go any further. But that's all that I have on Mary Cassatt and Edgar Degas. I hope that you, Sam, and anyone
Me.
listening, yeah, and anyone listening enjoyed this chat on Impressionism and art history.
Tori
Thank you
had
for
2
tuning in.
pages of notes. That's why it's so long. Thank
I'm
you for
sorry.
listening.
I think my timer says 40 minutes.
Does it?
Yes, so I should be good to go.
Well, we know
Um,
about you in time.
Anyways, thank you so much for listening to Mystery Woman Knowledge. I hope that you learned a lot about friendship and criticism and
What?
how important it is to Sam, how important it is to have loved ones that help you through life. Thanks for listening.